You mentioned while you were in school that you were doing studies relating to residential schooling systems. Um, what's what's not being shared in the news? Um, because it seems like what's being divulged in the news is reluctant on behalf of the news syndicates themselves, where it's like it feels like they don't want to be reporting this, but at the end of the day, because there are a lot of voices behind it that they have to say something about it. So it feels like it's a very watered down news report.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a fall off in interest around like the residential school graves and their numbers. When it first came out, the 215, it was a big deal and people talked about it a lot and a lot of conversations were happening. And that was only one school. And that was a pretty powerful number considering it was only one school, but there were so many schools across Canada. So when you think of that only being one school and then the number of other schools there were, of course, there's more graves out there. So I think when they found more graves in those numbers, people care less and less. They're kind of thinking, oh, we've already had this discussion. We've done our part. We've taken an interest in Orange Shirt Day, and maybe we've uh, decided to not take part in Canada Day that year, and those kinds of things. So I think the news is failing to continue the story and keep sharing the narrative of what's happening. And I think when people have a sense of what's going on in their local community, they have more of a connection to it. So where the numbers were shared, they were shared with about Kamloops. So that was we all heard it, and we all understood it, and we all felt it across the country, but the people closest probably felt it in a different way, more significantly. So when you don't share the numbers from the other schools across the country, we're losing an opportunity to connect with more sort of Canadians about how that could look in their community and the history of the area that they reside in, for sure. And the graves, honestly, we knew about them. I grew up with those stories of children dying in the schools and never going home, and mass graves. It was something that was talked about, and we knew. So when it came out, it wasn't shocking, but there ended up being a big media hype around it, and rightfully so. And it like opened a lot of really important conversations, but it changed, I think, the way that we talked about that information. And when we got the whole picture eventually, and we're still getting the whole picture, right? There's still more graves to be found. So
What is what is the government's reasoning then for
I don't know the government.
because like it seems like it's pretty straightforward where it's like just put these investigations into action and figure out, you know, where all these grave sites are located, but then the government just puts it off. There's no urgency behind it. So it's like what will it take for them to finally just say, yeah, well, we're gonna look into this officially?
Oh man, that's such a big question. I think it ties into so many other things. So I think the Truth and Reconciliation report that came out years back had a lot of information about residential schools. In those reports, people talked about the graves and children going missing. They also talked about the extensive abuse that happened in the schools, as well as a disconnect from community and culture, and an inability sometimes to go back to community and find their culture and what that's done to their families and their lives. And, Harper made the apology, which was a bit of a surprise, but also not, because I think there was a public outcry because of the information that had been revealed. And in the Truth and Reconciliation final report, there were calls to action, and a lot of those have to do with helping Indigenous communities heal and find empowerment and gain greater access to their resources, their language, the land, a number of things. And it all ties into sort of, I would say it goes hand in hand with UNDRIP. So the UN rights for Indigenous peoples and Declaration of Rights for Indigenous Peoples. And there's so many things. It impacts the people, it impacts our healing, it impacts the land that we're on, the rights that we have over that land. So I think once the government starts to acknowledge certain things, let's say residential schools, it ends up sort of being a slippery slope for them. So if they're going to apologize for one thing, then they have to apologize for more things. If they're going to acknowledge let's say our sovereignty or our rights to safety and healing, then how does that translate into greater issues like missing and murdered? Because that's still happening, even though they did a report. There's so many things, and it would require a lot of attention, money, and redistribution of certain powers that I don't think the government is ready to take on. It would be quite a long process. I think if the government was to fully acknowledge and move forward with creating positive change in Indigenous communities, it's happening little by little, but it's very little by little.
Very little, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just.
There's so many things.
I know.
I feel like my answer was very like roundabout, but it just tied, like all of our issues tie together, and there's different policies. We have the Indian Act and things that govern our lives as Indigenous peoples that impact everything. It impacts, how I go about going to university and having a home on my land, and how my son can be identified. It could impact who I choose to be in a romantic partnership with, because I may want them to have Indian status. Like all of these policies and acts that have to do with Indigenous people tie into so many aspects of our lives. And they also tie into greater Canadian issues of land rights and economy and things like that. So it's hard to kind of pinpoint what the correct path is for change. But I think listening to Indigenous people is a good start, letting us put those ideas out there for the public,
No, for sure. With that, again, with social media being such a tool in this fight, where do you think that these advances would have happened if social media wasn't a thing?
No.
Wow.
I think because social media makes information very accessible, and in a lot of cases digestible, and that can minimize certain things, but it can also reach more people. And I think there's kind of a movement for becoming woke on social media that we haven't seen, but like prior to social media in the same way, with the same impact. And people are very aware of conversations around rights and sort of the challenges that maybe marginalized people might face, and a whole other array of issues, right, that are happening in our world. So I don't think the media our mainstream media would have covered it in the same way that social media had. And I'm grateful for that, for sure. But it, there's good and bad to all of it. It's great to share knowledge and information and get the word out there, but it also opens Indigenous people up to danger, personal attacks from people who don't have the same ideas or acceptance of Indigenous people, and now have easy access to those people, just through popping them a message. So I think there's good and bad to all of it, for sure. Yeah.
Who are some websites or social media platforms, handles that you would recommend, considering there are a lot of there's a lot of misinformation that's also out there. So who you
Okay.
that people should follow and people should get acquainted with?
Oh man, depends what you're looking for.
um,
Honestly, matriarch movement, not to like toot our own horn, but with the podcast, every week a new indigenous person is interviewed and uh, their stories are told. Right now it's been on hold for a little bit, but our podcast previously, and it's going to be out there again very soon. Every week we're tagging indigenous women who are doing cool things, whether they are lawyers, environmentalists, artists, actors, all kinds of people who are, especially women, who are creating change in their communities. I think there's a lot of expectation that Indigenous people will have knowledge about everything, like just because we're Indigenous, we'll know about all Indigenous things. And that's not the reality. There's people who specialize in politics and law. There's people who specialize in creativity and self-help and wellness. There's people who are refining their culture through dance, and their focus maybe more on the physical empowerment that we can find through connecting with our bodies. So there's people in all realms, and I think depending on what your interests are, there's so many. Like I'm trying to think of people offhand. So like Ashley Collingbull, the previous Miss Universe or Mrs. Universe, who beauty queen and so knowledgeable, has an amazing story of overcoming so many personal challenges and abuse in her life, and finding her relationship within her family to heal, and then creating something amazing and becoming a really empowering voice for Indigenous women, and getting conversations happening that weren't happening before. And she's so beautiful that people just want to listen to her, so she's amazing. There's Notorious Cree, who's out there dancing on social media all the time, as well as creating educational stories about Indigenous masculinity, and teachings around things like braids and what it means to be a man, an Indigenous man these days. His partner, Kendra Jesse, is also doing a lot of work with movement and dance and creativity and athletics. I think she recently did a campaign with Nike, if I'm right. And she's also kind of moved over into humor as well, comedy. She's been working with O. Kyron, who is creating tons of sketches that highlight the power of Indigenous humor, because we use humor to get through things, and that's very apparent in some of the most recent sort of social media things that have been happening in the Indigenous community and on Indigenous TikTok. When we feel hopelessness, I would say, in particular situations, we take what we can and we create joy and laughter and humor out of it. And there's some great creators out there who really bring that to the forefront and make those conversations accessible and allow us to laugh at ourselves. So yeah, there's tons of people. I want to say more, but there's so many also Indigenous names that's their handle, and I could probably spell it out for you, but I won't be able to say them, and I'll just butcher them, and I feel badly about that. But our languages are diverse, so it is what it is. But yeah, those are a few people off the top of my head who are doing.
Yeah, you brought up Notorious Cree, and how he's kind of highlighting like the masculine side of understanding what it means to embrace that side of your culture, but bringing the two together. What is something that the patriarchy can learn from the matriarchy, and what's something that you feel the matriarchy can take from the patriarchy?
What the matriarchy can take from the patriarchy is a learning of what not to do.
Yeah,
I think patriarchy's done a number on our communities. There's been and I think worldwide, it's not only Indigenous people who have felt the effects of patriarchy and the division it's created. I feel like it has disempowered both men and women to be there. People can't be who they want to be and embrace things that they want to embrace or feel safe to talk about certain things. It goes for both men and women, and obviously women have, I think, had the short end of the stick, especially in that situation. So I think when matriarchal societies or matriarchs are looking at the patriarchy, we're learning what not to do, and and maybe that's just like a very simplified, and I'm totally biased because I'm Native and we love our women, and the matriarchs are born out of a community that respects Indigenous women and their experiences and their voices. A lot of my understanding and my teachings about matriarchy have to do with the cycles of life and the many roles that we play throughout our lives. Everybody shifts roles and jumps role to role throughout their lives. You know, like you go from, let's say, being a student to being a young person out there, like young professional, and then all of a sudden you're a husband or a parent or, you know, a community leader, or you're a stay-at-home parent. You know, everybody changes their roles multiple times through life. It's unavoidable. We all do it. And matriarchy places value on the knowledge that comes with the roles that women will embrace, especially motherhood and grandmotherhood. And that has to do with understanding that women are portals to the spirit world. So when we carry babies, we have like a portion of the spirit world in our bodies, and then we bring that through to earth. And through the process of giving birth, we're coming close to death. That's kind of the idea, is like the pain is so bad that we experience a transfer from the spirit world back into this world many times with the contractions, because of the feelings that brings through your body. And it's hard to explain unless you've given birth. I know if there's any moms listening, they'll kind of get what I mean with traveling somewhere and back when you're giving birth. You're screaming very dark.
Yeah, no, my power shut off.
No. But your teeth are so white.
That's the joys of running off of solar. So I was doing a lot of work today and I was using a lot of energy today. So my battery just drained. But it's all good.
Is it computer gonna die?
No, it's fine. It's fine. It was fully charged. But then after this, turn the generator on.
I'll try to talk faster. No. So I think the difference between patriarchy and matriarchy is patriarchal societies, I think, are kind of based on the idea that men are stronger than women and men have a responsibility to protect women and women should be grateful. That's like the patriarchal understanding, right? So women should just kind of like shut up and and do what we say, because we're protecting them against like world wars and whatever else threats that they've created because of their masculine issues. Whereas matriarchal communities understand that women bring life into this world, so they have a deeper understanding of the value of human life in a way that men will never have. And we are just as strong as men physically because of our ability to give birth and what that feels like, and also just the direct connection to the spirit world that men have to access in different ways through things like ceremony. So it's a real balancing of masculine and feminine. Like when we talk about matriarchy, it's not about like men being lower than women in any way. It's just about valuing Indigenous or women's voices and honoring their experiences, and letting those experiences and those voices go hands in hand with the particular knowledge that men have, because men have experiences that women will never have, and two-spirit people have experiences that other people won't have. You know, there's very particular knowledge that comes with whatever gender identity that we carry. And we can't know that unless you experience that. And we have to value those voices and those experiences. So it's about a balance, I would say.
Yeah, no, it's like it's so obvious when it comes to world leaders, especially on how more effectively a society is conditioned or functioning. Because whenever I think of world leaders and the change that they're bringing on, like my mind automatically goes to New Zealand, where their leader, Jacinda Ardern or something, where everything just makes sense in their society. From the way they handled COVID to the way that their indigenous people are treated, where there's just so much more care and affection. And I just attribute that to it coming from a feminine power, where that feminine side that men in power refuse to get in touch with, it just shows how detrimental it can be to an entire society when all you're basing all your decision on is just testosterone. And it's mind-blowing to me.
Mind blowing.
But Rebekah,
I can't get over how white your teeth are.
that's just because it's extremely dark in the back. So it's what do you call it?
You need to get your podcast sponsored by like Crest White Strips or something.
Just for this episode, Crest to give me new batteries for the truck. But no, thank you so much for coming on and gracing me with your time and your expertise. And I'm looking forward to following up more with Matriarch Movement, and not just Matriarch Movement, but your writing, especially on your own. And
do you read my blogs?
I do. Why would I not? I'm everything about you is admirable, to say the least. So
thank you.
I'm looking forward to more, and hopefully they come out on schedule as we discussed before. But
yeah, there's one coming out tomorrow.
Sweet, nice.
Yeah. And then every Friday I highlight 4 indigenous people who are thriving in their field. And that's been fun. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm so thrilled that you have this platform and that you're able to take advantage of it and make all of these connections. And I'm sure that it's going to lead to,
like you. I met you on Instagram.
Yeah. And
wild.
I'm happy that you've been able to stay in touch for as long as you have, and for keeping me in your thoughts and coming on this podcast. It genuinely means a lot.
Yeah. Where can I listen to this podcast?
Well, I don't know when exactly this episode is going to come out, because this is already for season 3.
Seasons. You have seasons.
Yeah, each season's going to have 20 episodes. We're still early. I know it's coming. And so season 1's already uploaded, ready to go. Season 2's in post-production right now and getting all edited. And then I'm recording everything for season 3 right now. So
you have a team?
You're looking at them.
Well, you said we, and I know that's like, I feel like it's very natural when you're talking about your work to say we, but sometimes it really is just an I.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, we have them edited and uploaded. It's like, who's we? Say I. Own it.
We is everything that's in my brain. It's my feminine side.
The multiple personalities that makes it happen.
Because it takes a team. It definitely takes a team. So the side of me that doesn't want to sit down and edit and listen and re-listen to the podcast, that's the other side. That's the other people that are involved right now.
I get that for sure.
But before you leave, I still haven't seen the reunion episode to Love is Blind. Did you watch it?
I did. I thought you were gonna watch it last night. I watched it at midnight last night too.
Oh, I'm gutted. I'm gonna watch it tonight though. But just because
It's nasty.
really, I'm looking forward to that. So, okay, because by the time this comes out, everybody would have watched it, and if people haven't watched it, that's too bad for them. But mm,
Log off now.
I did you expect the ones who were gonna get married and the ones who weren't to not?
I don't know.
I didn't
No, like we're not in those relationships, right? And
I didn't see Deep Teen
you,
saying no to Shake.
you didn't see that?
No, that threw me. I thought that would.
I saw it on her face when they were at the restaurant. I think she was wearing like a black top and they're sitting at a restaurant and he's talking about how she's his best friend and
Mhm.
maybe looking at what how the relationship could be like with that dynamic.
Yeah.
And I could see it on her face that there was a bit of skepticism.
Mm,
Uh, just kind of,
like I saw the skepticism in
what
the
are you really
relationship,
saying?
but I also saw that okay, Shake was a little immature, fair, but he he was coming around where I think whatever was ingrained in him, whatever traumas that are stuck in him, like he would have fell out of it if they did get married. I don't know. That's my thought on that. Because like
I
from
once you watch the reunion episode, you may have like there's a lot of backlash in the episode towards Shake,
ooh,
and
ooh,
there's conversation about how much was actually shared like to the public
hmm,
and
interesting. Okay.
some other things that happened behind the scenes. It's not like
Yeah.
specifically we don't know, but
Mhm.
it's implied that you know he went farther. Like he was pretty rough with his words towards his fiance
Oh shit.
and well and what he said about her behind her back, like there was more than what we saw. And it was a red flag to like the entire cast.
Oh shit. All right. No, definitely. I retract that then after I
No,
see
but no, I
it.
get it though. Like he's very charismatic. There's a quality about him, right?
I
And when
was
you
rooting for him when he touched her feet. That's when I was like, yeah, this guy's there's something there.
yeah, and that their first interaction looked so different than the interactions that followed, I
Mhm.
think it was a good start and then it went downhill, unfortunately.
Are you into a lot of reality shows?
No, I'm not. I'm into YouTubers, which is like a form of reality shows. People who vlog with their lives. I'm into that kind of thing. But
It's like who?
like who?
Yeah.
Um, there's a few. Lior. I want to. Her last name starts with an A. I want to say Alexander. She's like a spirituality um, vlogger.
Okay.
Widya, who also is spirituality, and she's pregnant right now. So it's like her transition into motherhood. Different vloggers provide different things.
Hmm.
I think I also like Molly May, who does fashion,
I know
and
none of these
Vera
people.
Kalinick, who does fashion. So it depends on how I'm feeling. If I want to like learn about spirituality and aliens, or do I want to like watch what the latest like fashion week sort of
That's
trends are,
funny.
Yeah.
So, are you pro alien or against alien?
Yeah, I would say it's a little considering how big our universe is.
Mhm.
We can't think we're the only ones. I'm sure we've all seen that like Google Earth video where you
Yeah.
like go out and you see how like tiny we are. And I like to think positive, I like to think um that if we have interactions that they're good and they would head in a good direction. I don't know how realistic that is. Maybe that's very naive, but
I was
there's lots of
having
conversations online about the different species of aliens
yeah.
and some of them being good and some of them being bad. And I find that kind of thing very interesting. I think it's just like a fun knowledge to get a hold of and enjoy like the fantasy of it in my mind. And then if it ever like reveals itself to be true, I'm like, I know about that.
Yeah, yeah. I find I was having this conversation the other day where in terms of being good or being bad when it comes to like discovering places and stuff. So it's like, I feel like, I think aliens, if we were to discover aliens, they would be nice. But then if aliens were to come here, they definitely try to conquer us and take over us.
Why do you think that?
So if we stumble on them, that means they're just going about their life and they're peaceful. They have no intention on like, I relate that to how places were conquered by Europeans, where the only reason why places like North America, places especially like the Philippines and stuff were conquered were because the people there were peaceful.
Okay.
Where the only reason that they got conquered was because they allowed whoever was coming to step on the beach. Where you have like,
Yeah, and even like took care of them, right?
yeah,
Because
you
they
have
saw
tribal
them as other
communities and stuff
humans.
like in the
Yeah.
Amazon that kill people on sight. If you're not from there, you're dead, right? And that's just to protect their ways. And that's how it should have been handled when Christopher Columbus came to North America and when Ferdinand Magellan came to the Philippines. That's how it should have been handled. They should.
Then who would you be here? Would I be here? Like,
I think we'd still be
I
here.
agree to some extent with you about like I would love to go back and be able to protect indigenous people. You know what I mean?
I think we'd still
And
be here, but because as you said, where it's like women are portals to the spirit world, where our spirit would still come into existence. Would we be
mhm,
like this? I don't know. But with that, we'd still be happy either way in our communities that we were in. But I
yeah.
think that that's my theory of aliens, where it's like it boils down to what are they doing here? If they come here, we're fucked. But
I think so you're not in like the alien world, eh? On like on TikTok or YouTube, eh?
no,
'Cause
what?
so basically there's this the widespread belief for people who have conversations about aliens and have like really researched it and are into it is that aliens have more technology, more advanced technology
Of
than we
course.
do
Yeah.
significantly. And in many cases, they're already here and they're interacting with our governments and have interacted with us in the past. There's the belief that um, there was a jump in sort of human evolution,
Oh,
a very
I'm all up to date with all that stuff. Like
yeah, a very quick jump.
there's
So
the
there's a
mixing
belief
thing.
that there was alien intervention with that jump
Yeah.
that allowed us to be like who we are
Yeah.
today with our functions. Um, so I don't know, understanding that and thinking of them as more advanced than us, I don't know if we're the species that's going to go out and discover aliens. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
But
think there's like a protective element that they have for themselves because many of like spiritual people believe that we are like um protected by aliens in some senses and they see us as kind of like the babies of the universe because we're not as evolved in a lot of ways, whether it's technologically or just through like our understanding of consciousness and the
so do
power
you
that we
think
have.
then they're purposely keeping us stunted at a level of intelligence?
No, that I think the thought is that they are waiting for us um,
Gotcha.
to evolve, but our governments and certain systems that benefit from us being stunted and benefit from us not having a full understanding and full use of our powers of consciousness
Mhm.
um, are stopping that from happening so that they can keep having like their worldly
Yeah.
wealth. There's like those unlocked CIA documents.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw anything on that, where the CIA actually did research on things like astral projection
Yeah.
and like the power of meditation and things and what can come of that. So it's very clear that our national intelligence bodies have an understanding that we aren't the reality that we are presented with every day in the media. Like we're not seeing commercials of like astral project here today, you know, it's like go buy soap Like, you know what I mean? It's a really different experience. And I think we
Yeah.
can get really caught up in those sort of mundane, where we're not accessing our full power.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Don't get me started on aliens.
Oh, I love the talk about aliens, and I think my favorite correlation with modern text and aliens is when it comes to scripture, where I wholeheartedly believe the Bible and the Quran and the Veda and all, like any spiritual text is actually just people's encounters with aliens, because it's all the same. It's the same all across the board. Doesn't matter which religion, it's just translated differently, where everybody has the exact same experience with these celestial beings. And
Angels.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Where it's like that's all it
I
is.
say
Like,
with quotes, my family would be so upset right now. Sorry, Dad.
oh man.
Angel. No hands.
But Rebekah, thank you again so much for coming on, and you are such a treat. And I'm looking forward to seeing how much you're gonna grow with everything that's coming your way. And
My heart.
everybody check her out, Rebekah Elkerton at Moccasin Mama on
That's
Instagram. I
me.
can't believe it's so dark here. I want to like
I
lean.
was like, are you gonna go fix your power now?
Yeah.
I can't believe that happened.
It's happened before, but this is the first time it's happened in a while. I'm wondering what happened in particular, but
I think it'll make an interesting thumbnail if you have like me in a dark screen. I think it'll look like creepy and people are like, what's happening?
I'll take your advice on that.
Those are my social media.
That's your social media tips that I'm gonna
Make
take.
it edgy.
But yeah, again, the Two Degrees podcast brought to you by the Play On Foundation. Everybody check out Rebekah Elkerton and make sure to follow her on Instagram and check out all of her writings, which I'm sure that you are also going to enjoy. But other than that, everybody, thanks for coming out and maging kayo.